Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy stands alone on a burning tank destroyer, firing a 50 caliber machine gun at 250 attacking German soldiers. January 26, 1945. Holtzwihr, France. The tank beneath his feet is on fire. Fuel tanks burning, ammunition cooking off. He should be running. Instead, he's the only thing standing between his company and complete annihilation. Bullets strike the tank around him. Artillery shells explode in the frozen ground. Murphy keeps firing, sweeping the machine gun across the advancing German infantry, dropping soldiers as they try to cross the open field. His boots are getting hot from the fire below. He can smell gasoline. The tank is going to explode. But if he leaves, the Germans will overrun his position and slaughter his retreating men. For over an hour, Murphy holds that position alone. He kills or wounds over 50 German soldiers. He directs artillery fire using the tank's radio while simultaneously operating the machine gun. When he finally runs out of ammunition, the German attack has stalled. Murphy climbs off the burning tank seconds before it explodes, walks back to his company, and organizes a counterattack that drives the Germans from the battlefield. This action will earn Murphy the Medal of Honor. It's just one of 33 awards and decorations he'll receive, making him the most decorated American soldier in World War II. And it all started with rejection. Marines rejected him. Paratroopers rejected him. The Army almost rejected him. Because at 5'5" and 112 pounds, Audie Murphy looked like a strong wind would blow him away. This is the story of how a teenager who was too small to fight became the soldier no enemy could kill. And it begins not with heroism, but with poverty, loss, and a boy who refused to accept that being small meant being weak. Audie Leon Murphy was born June 20, 1925, in Kingston, Texas, the seventh of 12 children in a sharecropper family so poor that Audie later said there were times they survived on rabbits he shot and wild greens his mother gathered. His father abandoned the family when Audie was young. His mother died when he was 16. At 16 years old, Audie became responsible for his younger siblings. The family had nothing, no money, no home of their own, no prospects. Audie picked cotton for 50 cents a day. He hunted to put food on the table. He learned to shoot because ammunition cost money, and every missed shot meant his family went hungry. By age 12, he could hit a rabbit's eye at 50 yards. By 14, he was feeding 8 people on what he could kill or trap. When America entered World War II in December 1941, Murphy was 16 years old. He tried to enlist the day after Pearl Harbor. The Marine recruiter took one look at this scrawny teenager and laughed. "Come back when you grow up, kid." Murphy tried the paratroopers. Same response. Too small, too light. Paratroopers needed men who could carry heavy equipment. Murphy looked like the equipment would carry him. He tried the Navy. Rejected. Too young, and they didn't believe he was 18, even when he lied about his age. Finally, he found an Army recruiter desperate enough to take anyone. Murphy's sister helped by signing papers claiming to be his mother and giving permission for a minor to enlist. On June 30th, 1942, 17-year-old Audie Murphy became a private in the United States Army. Basic training revealed what the recruiters had missed. Murphy could shoot. Growing up hunting rabbits to feed his family, he'd learned to make every bullet count. Where other recruits sprayed bullets hoping to hit something, Murphy aimed carefully and fired once. One bullet, one target down. His instructors noticed immediately. But shooting targets on a range was different from combat. Murphy shipped out to North Africa in February 1943, assigned to Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. His fellow soldiers looked at this baby-faced kid who barely needed to shave and assumed he'd die in his first battle. Murphy was quiet, didn't brag, didn't try to prove himself. He just waited for his chance. It came on July 10th, 1943, during the invasion of Sicily. Murphy's company landed under fire and pushed inland against German defenders. In his first combat action, Murphy killed 2 Italian officers who were directing machine gun fire at his platoon. Clean shots at 200 yards. Both targets dropped. His platoon sergeant saw it and immediately put Murphy in a position where his shooting skills mattered. Over the next 2 months in Sicily, Murphy became the soldier everyone wanted near them in a fight. He didn't panic under fire. He didn't waste ammunition. He moved carefully and shot accurately. When his platoon came under fire, Murphy would locate the enemy position and eliminate it with precise rifle fire, while other soldiers were still figuring out where the shots were coming from. The Italian campaign followed. Salerno, Naples, Anzio. Murphy fought through all of them. Each battle reinforced what his commanders already knew. This small, quiet kid from Texas was a natural soldier. He understood terrain instinctively. He could read a battlefield and know where the enemy would be. Most importantly, he didn't freeze when people were trying to kill him. He got calmer, more focused, more dangerous. By June 1944, Murphy had been promoted to sergeant and earned his first decorations for valor. Then came the invasion of southern France, Operation Dragoon. Murphy's company landed near Saint-Tropez and pushed inland. The fighting was brutal. German forces were retreating, but making the Americans pay for every mile. On August 15, 1944, near the village of Ramatuelle, Murphy's best friend was killed by a German sniper. His name was Latty Tipton, a kid from Tennessee who'd been Murphy's friend since basic training. They'd fought side by side through North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. Now Tipton was dead, shot through the head, while Murphy was 20 feet away. Something changed in Murphy that day. He'd been a good soldier before. After Tipton died, he became relentless. He hunted German positions with cold efficiency. He took risks that should have gotten him killed, but somehow survived through combination of skill and luck that defied explanation. Within 2 weeks, he'd killed so many Germans that his company commander put him in for a battlefield commission. On October the 14th, 1944, Audie Murphy became Second Lieutenant Murphy. He was 19 years old. He'd been in combat for 16 months. He'd earned the Bronze Star and the Silver Star, and he was just getting started. The worst fighting came in January 1945 during the Allied push into Germany. Murphy's company was ordered to hold a position near the village of Holtzwihr in eastern France. The area was flat, open farmland covered in snow. No cover, no concealment, just frozen fields and a few farm buildings. On January 26th, German forces launched a major counterattack, 6 Panzer tanks and 250 infantry advancing toward Murphy's position. Murphy's company had 120 men and no anti-tank weapons that could stop Panzers. The company commander ordered a withdrawal to the woods behind them. Better to fall back than be overrun. Murphy sent his men back but stayed forward himself with his artillery observer, directing fire from American artillery batteries miles away. They took position in a small depression that provided minimal cover. Murphy had his radio and his M1 carbine. The artillery observer had binoculars and coordinates for fire missions. The German infantry advanced in textbook formation, using the panzers for cover. Murphy called in artillery strikes that scattered the infantry temporarily, but they regrouped and kept coming. At 300 yards, German soldiers spotted Murphy's position and directed machine gun fire at it. The artillery observer was hit and killed instantly. Murphy was alone. One of the American tank destroyers that was supposed to be supporting Murphy's company had been hit earlier and abandoned. It was burning about 50 yards from Murphy's position, flames pouring from the engine compartment. The crew had bailed out and run. Murphy looked at that burning tank destroyer and made a decision that should have gotten him killed. He ran to the tank destroyer, climbed onto the deck, and swung the 50 caliber machine gun toward the advancing Germans. The tank was on fire. The fuel tanks were burning. Ammunition inside was starting to cook off from the heat. Standing on top of it was suicide. Murphy didn't care. He opened fire on the German infantry at 200 yards range. The 50 caliber machine gun fired 650 rounds per minute. Murphy swept it across the German formations, dropping soldiers as they tried to advance across the open ground. Germans fell in groups as the heavy bullets tore through them. The Germans couldn't believe what they were seeing. One American standing on a burning vehicle, firing a machine gun at an entire company of infantry backed by tanks. They directed everything they had at him: rifle fire, machine gun fire, tank cannon fire. Shells exploded around the tank destroyer. Bullets struck the armor plating. Murphy kept firing. His boots were burning. The metal deck was so hot from the fire below that it was melting the rubber soles of his boots. Murphy could feel the heat through his uniform. The tank was going to explode. Everyone knew it. Murphy knew it. He stayed anyway, firing controlled bursts, conserving ammunition, making every bullet count just like he'd learned shooting rabbits in Texas. The German attack stalled. Soldiers who'd been advancing confidently were now pinned down or dead. The panzers couldn't get a clean shot at Murphy because their own infantry was in the way. Murphy switched to the tank destroyer's radio and continued calling in artillery fire, giving coordinates between bursts from the machine gun. American artillery shells began landing among the Germans with deadly accuracy. Murphy was adjusting fire in real time, watching the impacts and calling corrections. The combination of his machine gun fire and the artillery was devastating. German soldiers began falling back, taking cover, breaking formation. For over an hour, Murphy held that position alone on the burning tank destroyer. He fired over 2,000 rounds from the .50 caliber, killing or wounding over 50 Germans. He called in dozens of artillery strikes that broke up every attempt to advance. His leg was wounded by shell fragments, his feet were burned from the hot metal, he was covered in soot and blood, and he never stopped firing. When the Germans finally withdrew, Murphy climbed down from the tank destroyer and walked back to his company. The tank exploded 30 seconds later, a massive fireball that consumed the entire vehicle. Murphy had gotten off just in time. His men stared at him in shock. They'd watched the entire action from the woods. They'd seen Murphy stand alone against an entire German battalion and win. Murphy's company commander tried to send him to the hospital for his wounds. Murphy refused. His feet were burned, his leg was hit, but he could still fight. He organized his men and led a counterattack that drove the remaining Germans from the area. The Battle of Holtzwihr was over. Murphy had held the line when everyone else thought it was lost. The Medal of Honor citation for Audie Murphy's actions that day describes how he stood on a burning tank destroyer for over an hour, directing artillery fire and operating a .50 caliber machine gun against overwhelming enemy forces. It notes that his indomitable courage and refusal to give an inch of ground saved his company from being destroyed and killed approximately 50 enemy soldiers. The citation concludes by saying that Murphy's actions were far above and beyond the call of duty and reflect the highest traditions of military service. But the Medal of Honor was just one of 33 awards Murphy received. He also earned the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts for wounds received in action. France awarded him the Legion of Honor and the Croix de Guerre with Palm. Belgium gave him the Belgian Croix de Guerre. He received campaign medals for North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany. By war's end, Audie Murphy was the most decorated American soldier of World War II. Murphy returned to the United States in June 1945 at age 20. He was a national hero. Life magazine put him on the cover. The Army paraded him around the country for publicity. Hollywood wanted to make movies about him. But Murphy struggled with what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. He had nightmares about combat. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He'd wake up fighting imaginary enemies. Despite these struggles, Murphy became a movie star. He appeared in over 40 films, often playing cowboys and soldiers. His most famous role was playing himself in the 1955 film To Hell and Back, based on his autobiography. The film was Universal Pictures' biggest moneymaker for 20 years until Jaws. Murphy was modest about his war record, rarely discussing his actions unless asked directly. What haunted Murphy wasn't the Germans he'd killed. It was the friends he'd lost. Latty Tipton and all the others who died while Murphy survived. He once said that the Medal of Honor belonged to all the men who'd fought beside him, especially those who didn't make it home. Murphy saw the medal not as recognition of his individual heroism, but as a memorial to everyone who'd served. Murphy died in a plane crash on May 28, 1971, at age 45. The small private plane he was riding in flew into a mountain during bad weather near Roanoke, Virginia. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. His grave became the second most visited site at Arlington after President Kennedy's. The irony of Audie Murphy's story is that every branch of the military that rejected him for being too small later celebrated him as a perfect example of American military excellence. The Marines who'd laughed at him used his combat record in recruiting materials. The army that almost didn't take him held him up as the ideal soldier. The kid who was too scrawny to fight proved that size had nothing to do with courage or combat effectiveness. Murphy's success came from the same skills he'd developed growing up poor in Texas. Patience, careful aim, making every shot count, understanding that missing meant failure. Those lessons learned hunting rabbits to feed his family translated directly to combat. Where other soldiers panicked and sprayed bullets, Murphy aimed carefully and fired once. Where others froze under pressure, Murphy got calmer and more focused. His actions on that burning tank destroyer at Holtzwihr demonstrated everything that made Murphy exceptional. He stayed when everyone else ran. He fought when survival meant retreating. He stood on a vehicle that was literally on fire and could explode at any second because leaving meant his men would die. That decision, to accept probable death rather than abandon his company, defined who Audie Murphy was. The recruiter who rejected Murphy from the Marines later said he'd made the biggest mistake of his career. If he'd looked past Murphy's size and seen what was inside, the Marines might have claimed America's most decorated soldier instead of the Army. But that recruiter did what everyone did when they first saw Audie Murphy. He judged based on appearance and assumed this small, quiet kid couldn't possibly be a fighter. Murphy proved them all wrong. Every German soldier who underestimated him because of his size learned the mistake too late. Every officer who thought he was too young for command responsibility found out he was one of the best combat leaders in the army. Every challenge that should have defeated him, whether in combat or in life, Murphy faced down and overcome through sheer determination. The lesson of Audie Murphy's life is simple. Circumstances don't determine outcomes. Murphy was born into poverty. He lost his mother at 16. He was rejected by every military branch he tried to join. He was too small, too young, too poor to have any chance at success. None of that mattered. What mattered was that Murphy refused to accept other people's judgments about what he could or couldn't do. When the Marines said he was too small to fight, he found someone who'd let him fight anyway. When combat was terrifying and men were dying around him, he stayed calm and did his job. When Germans were attacking and everyone else was retreating, he stood alone on a burning tank and held the line. Murphy didn't succeed despite his circumstances. He succeeded by refusing to let circumstances define him. The next time someone tells you you're too small, too young, too inexperienced, or too anything to accomplish something, remember Audie Murphy standing on that burning tank destroyer. 5'5", 112 pounds when he enlisted, rejected by multiple military branches, too poor to afford shoes growing up. None of it mattered when it counted. What mattered was courage, skill, and the refusal to quit regardless of the odds. Murphy once said that the real heroes were the ones who didn't come home. He saw the Medal of Honor as belonging to all of them, not just to him. But Murphy's humility doesn't diminish what he accomplished. He was the most decorated American soldier in World War II because he repeatedly did things that should have been impossible. He survived battles that killed stronger, bigger men. He led soldiers who trusted him because he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. And he proved that being underestimated can be an advantage when you're determined to prove everyone wrong. They rejected him from every branch of the military. Then he became America's most decorated soldier. That transformation from rejected teenager to national hero happened because Audie Murphy understood something fundamental. Your circumstances might limit your opportunities, but they don't have to limit your achievements. Size doesn't matter. Background doesn't matter. What other people think about you doesn't matter. What matters is what you do when everything is on the line and everyone is counting on you. Murphy stood alone on a burning tank for over an hour, and held off 250 attacking soldiers. That's not something a weak person does, that's something a hero does. And Murphy proved you don't have to be big to be a hero. You just have to refuse to quit when quitting would be easier than fighting.